What is going on, everyone? In today's video, I'm going to be talking about some plants that you can grow in your indoor gardens. Let's start. So at the number 5 spot, we are going to be talking about zucchini. Yeah, you can actually grow this inside, believe it or not. I know what you're thinking. There's no way you can grow zucchini inside, just simply because of how big their roots are, because they can get as big as 36 inches in some cases. But according to my seed packet that I read it off of a couple years ago, it was safe for use inside, and well, I managed to grow one last year for about like 2 or 3 months before I just stopped watering it. I transplanted it a couple of times, so you need a lot of transplanting and you need a huge pot to grow it inside with. But other than that, yeah, you can grow zucchini inside as long as you're careful and don't make an awful mistake. Well, be my guest, grow zucchini inside, since it's that time of year we start either destroying our garden or bringing it inside. Now at the number 4 spot, we have cucumbers. You're like, no way, dude, you can't even grow cucumbers inside. Well, what if I were to tell you you're wrong with that statement? You can grow them somewhat inside. You need to keep them really well pruned, and you also need to have like a sort of like an indoor trellis, because, well, unless you have a giant shelf with a bunch of mesh attached to it, you're not going to be able to grow them inside, because they need a trellis. Because here, let me show you what's left of them. So, when I'm going to show you this, I'm going to be showing you, you see what's left of it right there? You see how it's like attached to that? That's basically how the cucumbers will attach to it. So they need a trellis to keep growing up. And well, if they don't have one, well, they're going to lean over and all their cucumbers are going to be awful. So yeah, make sure you be aware of what you're growing. And yeah, I literally just realized this, but there's a pepper right here, which we'll talk about in a minute, but there's literally a gourd growing on top of the pepper. Which goes to show you how incredible our gourds are doing this year. Now sitting at the number 3 spot, we have peppers, like I just talked about. Now peppers, they are pretty simple to grow, and the cool thing about these peppers is that if you trip and fall on them, like at the end of the season, like let's just say you're out here and let's just say you're in your garden doing work, and you trip and fall and you end up knocking one down. If it's small enough, you can bring it inside, put it in some water, and sometimes, it's not common, but it's not uncommon either. I'd say it's like a 3 out of 10 chance that this happens, that you will get one that'll sprout up. Now, another thing you can do is you can literally rip them out of your garden, because they will grow as long as they need. And then you can transplant them inside. But be careful with that, because not every one of them is good. If you start them inside, you move them outside, and then you move them back inside. So make sure you also plant some seeds in there. And yeah, make sure you're doing that. Because if you don't, well, you're screwing something up somewhere. So yeah, make sure you're growing them properly. I have a tutorial on that. I'll talk about that. I'll have that in the description if you want to check it out. And yeah, other than that, let's continue to the number 2 spot. Now at the number 2 spot are tomatoes. Any type will do. Except if you like to use bigger trellises to put cherry tomatoes up, you can't do that. But these plants right here, tomatoes, they're dead right now, because we haven't been watering them, because we're in an awful drought right about now. But you know what? If you want to grow them inside, grow them inside. I don't care what you do, because growing them inside, that'll help them a lot with increasing their values. And you know what? They won't have to deal with beetles. You know, like potato beetles, other types of beetles, you know. And yeah, before we talk about the number 1 spot, I'm going to move on to an honorable mention real quick. But yeah, they're pretty easy to grow inside, I will say. Now, an honorable mention here, actually 2 of them, we're going to be talking about eggplants and basil. Now, I was actually, before I even picked up the camera to film this video, I was actually going to put basil at the number 1 spot until a thought came through my head and I remembered what the number 1 was actually going to be. But you know what? I'll talk about that in the number 1, so you're just going to have to watch to the end to find out what the number 1 is. But eggplants, they grow a little bit taller, and they get to about, I want to say, about like 35 to 40 inches. And then basil, yeah, they are a lot smaller. They're like 18 to 24 inches. This one's like, that one's almost 4 feet tall for some reason, and this one's like 20 inches tall. So they range big time. But you know what? They will still go to seed if you don't rip out the flowers, and you know, they're just an S-load of work for you to do, and unfortunately, I don't know if you want to go through that, so that's why I just put them on my honorable mentions list. So yeah, let's talk about number 1 now. So you've made it so far, and I'm pretty sure you if you've had an experience with growing an indoor garden before, or at least had a few plants inside, you know exactly what I'm talking about. There's actually going to be 2 #1 spots because I tied them here at a score of 96.2 each. Yeah, I forgot to mention, but I'm putting up a score during the editing for each of them. But I averaged out to 96.2 for them each. Green beans and spices. So green beans, let me talk about that real quick. So green beans, you don't really need a trellis to grow them, that's optional. We do have some green beans, but they are buried inside of the gourds this year, and I'm pretty sure with the gourds weighing them down, they died. I don't even know if you want to grow gourds in the garden next year. But one thing's for sure, we're not going to grow them next to the green beans, so. Yeah, the green beans, they're really good. And you know what? You can grow them inside, because that's what we did during the spring last year. We grew a couple inside, and well, we ate a couple of them for dinner. We got like 5 or 6 out of them. You can even grow them up in your kitchen. If you have like a giant like windowsill in your kitchen, you can grow them right there. That's exactly what we did. Spices. I'm talking about things like oregano, parsley. Let's see, what else do we have? We have a lot of them. Basil isn't really a spice, but you know, we have all these different, well, basil is technically a spice, but I'm not including it here because I grow it myself, but spices are a big part. Rosemary, I remember having rosemary pizza a couple years ago. I don't even know if it was rosemary pizza, but it was a pizza with one of these spices, and it was pretty damn good. So you know what, all these plants, they are easy to grow inside. Spices, we've probably all grown inside. I'm pretty sure even before you hopped on this video, you've had at least like 2 or 3 years of experience with spices. I know, I'm pointing out the obvious here. But you know what, stay tuned for some future videos about gardening.